This is TrueNight Voices, and I'm Elias. I only speak after midnight. Tonight, I'll share a story that was meant to stay buried. But some things don't stay silent forever. In the fall of 2021, I moved to a small town called Belmere in northern Kentucky. It wasn't my first choice, but after a messy breakup and a job offer I couldn't refuse, I figured the change might do me good. I rented a narrow townhouse on the edge of a quiet development, 3 rows of identical homes with chain-link fences and motion lights that flickered more often than they worked. I was 27, liked my coffee black, my nights quiet, and my doors locked. I didn't expect much excitement in Belmere. I certainly didn't expect what happened. My unit backed up to a gravel alleyway that separated our row from another line of townhouses. A few neighbors waved when they saw me, but most kept to themselves just how I preferred it. Except for the man in Unit 9. He wasn't loud or aggressive. In fact, he never spoke. But every night, without fail, he would stand in his backyard just after sundown. Just stand there, facing the alley, arms at his sides. The first time I noticed him, I thought maybe he was waiting for someone. The 3rd night in a row, I got uneasy. By the 2nd week, I started closing my curtains a little earlier. He was tall, probably mid-50s, always dressed in black, a thick coat, even when the weather didn't call for it. His face was mostly hidden under the shadow of his hood, but there was something in the posture. Rigid. Intentional. He never paced, never smoked, just stood there. And he never missed a night. At first, I told myself it was none of my business. People are weird. Some have rituals. Maybe he lost someone. Maybe he was watching the stars. But it didn't feel like that. It felt like he was watching the spaces between things, waiting for something to move. A month in, things got stranger. I started hearing sounds at night gravel shifting in the alley, a soft knock on my back gate, the faintest creak of my fence latch. But every time I looked, nothing was there. I bought a floodlight with a motion sensor and installed it over the back patio. It triggered 5 times that week. The camera I set up caught nothing but static during those moments. Then, one night, I came home late from work. It was just past 1 a.m. I stepped out of the car and heard it, breathing, heavy, slow. Just on the other side of the fence. I froze, waited. And then I heard gravel crunch and footsteps retreating. The next morning, there were boot prints in the frost. They led from the alley to the base of my window and stopped. I reported it to the police. They filed a report, said they'd send a car around, but I could tell from their tone and nothing would come of it. The man in black kept showing up. Same spot, same silence. I started dreaming about him. In the dreams, he was always closer than I thought. Then came the night I caught him on the camera. It was 2:13 a.m. I got a notification on my phone. I pulled up the app, expecting another false alarm. But this time, the footage was clear. He was standing in my backyard, closer than ever, facing the camera, and he was smiling. Not a grin, not a sneer. Just a slow, small smile like he knew something I didn't. I went cold. Didn't sleep the rest of the night. I showed the footage to the police the next morning. They came, took it seriously this time, asked around. That's when I learned something that made my skin crawl. Unit 9 had been empty for over a year. The man who used to live there, Mr. Adler, had passed away the previous fall. Stroke. His place hadn't been rented since. But I saw him every night. Or someone who looked like him. The landlord swore the unit was locked. No signs of forced entry. No one on the lease. I left town 2 weeks later. Broke the lease. Didn't care. A month after moving to Cincinnati, I got a text from the woman who rented my old place. "Hey, sorry to bother you. Did you ever see a tall guy in black just standing by the alley?" I didn't answer. But some nights, when the lights flicker outside my new place, I check the window. And sometimes, I swear I see the shape of someone standing still, just beyond the reach of the light. In 2020, I took a contract job in upstate Vermont, working with a property company that handled foreclosure cleanouts. Not glamorous, but it paid well, and I liked the solitude. My name's Kyle. I'm not superstitious. I don't scare easy. But there's one property I still can't forget. It was a white colonial at the edge of a pine thicket outside a town called Leversend. The owner, a man named Vernon Hale, had passed away the year before. No will, no family. The place had sat untouched for months. My job was to go in, take inventory, prep it for sale. The first time I stepped in, I noticed the silence. Not just quiet hollow, like sound didn't carry inside. The kind of silence that feels layered. The place was dusty, but not filthy. Mail stacked by the door, one cup in the sink. The calendar still said August 2019. I moved room to room, cataloging furniture. Then the phone rang. A landline. I jumped. It was in the kitchen, wall-mounted, beige plastic, ringing loud and sharp. But when I picked it, up dead line, no dial tone. I checked the cord. It wasn't even plugged in. That should have been the end of it. A weird glitch, static, maybe a capacitor discharging. But I heard it ring again later, this time from upstairs. There was another phone in the master bedroom. Same model, same ring. When I picked it up, a voice whispered, "Don't stand in the bedroom." Then click. I stood frozen, heart in my throat. I tried calling the number back, but the phone had no power. I even checked the outlet. Nothing connected. I told my boss. He laughed, said maybe I was overtired. The next morning, I went back with a coworker, Lena. She was tougher than me, former military, didn't believe in anything she couldn't punch. We worked the downstairs. She found an old ledger full of names, first names, only with dates next to them. Some were crossed out. A few had notes. Came twice. Warned. Too late. It was creepy, but we chalked it up to a lonely man's paranoia. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the voice. So I drove by the house around midnight, just to prove to myself it was nothing. There was a light on upstairs. I hadn't left anything on. I parked down the road, walked back. As I got closer, I could hear the phone ringing. Again. Always the same rhythm. I stood outside the window and looked in. The upstairs phone was off the hook, dangling, and a shadow stood in the hallway, perfectly still. I left. The next morning, Lena told me she was done with the property. She hadn't said anything, but the night before, someone had called her burner cell from a blocked number. When she answered, they said, "Don't listen in the basement." We didn't go back. We told the company to reassign the contract. But 2 weeks later, a new guy, Ben, picked up the job. He laughed off the stories. Last I heard, he quit, packed up overnight, didn't give notice. Just left a note on his door that said, "The phone won't stop ringing." My name is Evan, and for a while, I thought I was losing my mind. Back in 2019, I moved to the outskirts of Bristol, Tennessee for a night security job. Not ideal, but the hours worked with my schedule, and the pay was enough to rent a small place just outside of town. The house was old, 2 stories, with chipped paint and a sagging front porch. But the rent was cheap. Too cheap, maybe. It had a finished basement, which I didn't really need, but I liked the idea of extra space. When I moved in, the landlord handed me 2 sets of keys for the main house and another for the basement. He said, "Don't worry about what's down there. It's just storage. Door sticks sometimes." The basement door was in the hallway behind the kitchen, narrow, creaky, and shut tight. I never opened it. For the first month, everything was normal. I worked nights, came home at sunrise, and slept through most of the day. The house was quiet, a little drafty, but nothing unusual. Then one night, I woke up around 2:30 a.m. Not to a sound, but to a feeling like pressure in the air. Stillness, but thick. I lay in bed, straining to listen, and then I heard it. Knock, knock. Not from the front door, not from outside, from underneath me. The sound came again, slow and measured. Knock, knock. I sat up. My bed was directly above the kitchen. The basement door was below that. I got out of bed, heart pounding, walked through the dark hallway, every board creaking under my feet. I stood at the top of the basement stairs. The door looked the same as always. Closed. Still. I didn't open it. The next night, it happened again. And again. Same time. Same rhythm. Knock. Knock. I checked the locks, windows. Everything was sealed. By the 4th night, I tried to record it. Set up my phone on the kitchen counter. At 2:31 a.m., the knocking came. But when I watched the footage the next morning, nothing. No sound. Just me, standing in the kitchen, staring at a closed door. I told myself it had to be pipes, settling wood, rats. But then came the footsteps. One night, I heard them clear as day moving up the stairs from the basement. Slow, deliberate. I held my breath as they stopped just behind the door. The knob didn't turn, but I could hear breathing. I called the landlord the next morning. He was quiet for a long time, then said, "You're not the first to ask, but there's never been anyone down there. We checked." "You have a key," I said. "I do," and I stopped using it. After that, I started sleeping with a chair jammed against my bedroom door. I bought a latch for the basement door, one of those heavy-duty ones with bolts. But the knocking didn't stop. Sometimes I'd wake up and the lights would be on in the kitchen, or the faucet would be dripping, even though I hadn't used it. I started hearing whispers. Faint, almost like static, but always right on the edge of recognition. Like someone was saying my name, but only when I wasn't really listening. The last night I spent in that house, I came home around 4 a.m. after covering a double shift. I was exhausted. I didn't even change, just collapsed onto the couch. I woke up to the sound of something moving upstairs. But I lived alone. I sat up. The air was freezing. The footsteps moved from the hall to my bedroom, then down again, toward the basement. I followed them, slowly. When I got to the kitchen, the basement door was open, just a crack, and the new bolt I'd installed was on the floor, snapped. I grabbed my keys, ran out the door, and drove until the sun came up. I never went back. A week later, I called a local contractor and paid him to go into the basement. I didn't want to know what was there, just needed it sealed. He texted me 2 words after the job was done. Door gone. I asked what he meant. He didn't reply. He never sent the invoice. And I never asked again. You've just heard a true story, told by Elias after midnight. If you're hearing this, maybe you were meant to. Subscribe, and I'll return when the world is quiet again.